Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. This is your host, Matt Brown. I hope everyone's having an amazing Wednesday so far. Speaking of Wednesday, we have Why Not Wednesday today. Oh, my goodness. I love the Why Not Wednesday segment. I love all my segments, but Why Not Wednesday? Answer your guys' questions right here on the pod. Like, honestly, not really knowing what questions I'm going to get. I know some of them because some of you guys text me on like Snapchat and stuff ahead of time, and I see it already. But when I open up those DMs, it's completely random. I think of it right on the spot, and I love that. So, again, thank you guys so much for all the support and all these questions in the DMs. I have a ton of them. Like, I literally have a ton of them. I'm not going to be able to answer them all on the podcast. So again, keep firing in all those questions. I even have some on TikTok DMs. My TikTok has really been blowing up recently. It's not like blowing up, but I have videos with 5,000 views. They're consistently getting over like 1,000 views. So, and I've gained a good bit of followers over the last couple of days alone. So my YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, we are doing very good and making a lot of progress. So again, thank you guys so much. I got the Instagram pulled up right here, ready to open up those DMs. Well, actually, my first one here is going to be on Snapchat. I had a friend message me literally, and then it was last Thursday. So let's do that real quick. So let's get right into Why Not Wednesday. First question. Next, Why Not Wednesday, you need to address how the 49ers are going to the bowl. I think one thing with the 49ers, they have the roster to go back to the Super Bowl. And I think people acknowledge that. The only thing with their rosters, and I mentioned, I talked with the 49ers a good bit on this podcast so far, and they're a very popular team. There's a lot of 49ers fans here in the Baltimore area. Just in Maryland in general, everywhere really. There's just a lot of 49ers fans. No one questions their talent. They question more or less their health and the age. And again, I mentioned that a couple times on here. I mentioned that a couple times on here, but that's the really only glaring factor. And there's also been some talks with Kyle Shanahan now about like the security of his job. If they go 6-11 or 7-10, he could be gone. I don't think they'll get rid of him that fast. It depends on the circumstances. Like if the whole team goes down again and it's just, they're out there playing with scrubs, to be honest with you, they'll end up giving him the benefit of the doubt. What's he been to 2 Super Bowls, 3, 2 or 3 of them to this point, so again, I mean, he's been very successful as that coach there. I think he's been to 2. He would have went to a 3rd, but the Rams NFC Championship, the interception drop or whatever. Yeah, that was brutal. I remember watching that live. I was like, oh my god, 49ers just lost their trip to the Super Bowl off of that. But Trent Williams, about to be 40 years old. That is a little worrisome. He goes down. He's been an Iron Man back there. There's no doubt about that. I think he'll still be very good. But again, he goes down or holds his ankle or something, you have to worry. You do, because, especially at that age, it's going to be hard to recover, especially go out there on the field and perform at the level Trent Williams does. He's a game changer. He's one of the greatest offensive linemen of all time. McCaffrey, his age is, he's starting to get up there a little bit, barring all of his injuries. He's still really in his prime, but all the injuries he's had throughout his whole career, not even just for this stint with the 49ers last year, his entire career, worrisome a little bit. Whenever he gets an injury, it lingers the whole season. You just have to hope he doesn't get one, really, and that's kind of a problem for an injury-prone guy. It's really held him back from having a solidified Hall of Fame career. Like, no doubt he's a top 10 all-time guy. He's not there because he just hasn't played enough. Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall just to start off the season on the PUP list again. Worrisome Brock Purdy, Again, I think he's still a guy that doesn't elevate the talent around him. I think he's just a product of his talent. Again, I think he's a good quarterback. He is a good quarterback. But the money he's getting paid is the kind of money of the guys who elevate the team around them. I just don't think he's that level of quarterback. But again, he has the talent that they can get to the Super Bowl with. Kittle is still Kittle. Again, his age, though, like Kittle's starting to get up there in tight end years a little bit. I think he's still a high-level producing guy, though. He still has a couple of really good years left, I think. Barney he stays healthy. The defense is good. I still have Fred Warner, Nick Bosa. There's pieces everywhere on that team. So the Robert Saleh hire, I was a really big fan of. He just coaches a hard-hitting, just very good defense. And he's a guy who elevates his defensive players, which they haven't had a defensive coordinator. Steve Wilks, he hasn't really done that over the last couple of years. Their defense has been a massive issue in San Francisco. They were like the number one ranked defense for a while, but at least top 3, top 5. And then it just completely crumbled. So, again, the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl, the main thing is just for them to stay healthy. Because if they do and they have their guys playing, Ayuk, Pearsall, Kittle, Trent Williams, the rest of the offensive line, kind of a little bit of a question mark there in San Francisco. Again, if Purdy goes out and proves everyone wrong, he goes out and elevates that talent around them. That will mean a lot for a lot of people. So, Jawan Jennings is a really good receiver as well. So, again, the 49ers just need to stay healthy because they don't have a lot of years left with their core of players. They just don't. So, it's the main thing for them. Next question. Hey, Matt, do you think Cam Ward is... or how do you think Cam Ward is going to do in his rookie year? I had to go back to the EMs for this one. I had the last question at Snapchat. So, how do you think Cam Ward is going to do in his rookie year? I think he'll be good. I don't think he'll be mind-blowing. He's not going to have a Jane Daniels or a, CJ Stroud type of rookie year, just because, not necessarily saying that he's not talented enough. He just doesn't have the personnel around him. I don't think Brian Callahan's a very good coach. I think he'll be the one at the end of this year. Maybe even by the middle of this year. I think he'll go through the whole year, to be honest with you. Excuse me. Through the whole year. Just because there's really no expectations of the Titans. But there with rumors like Saban maybe going to the NFL and stuff like that. There's going to be a lot of high-level head coaches, and you never know with the situation with Bill Belichick in North Carolina. I'm going to tell you something. If Bill Belichick had the opportunity to come back to the NFL and even just coach the Tennessee Titans, he'd be on the plane flying to Tennessee in the next 10 minutes. There's no doubt about it. Mike McCarthy might be, if Cam Ward can get that level of head coach, that's why I'm bringing those guys up. I'm not trying to diss Brian Callahan, but those are high-level guys that elevate the players around them. Cam Ward's going to see a massive jump. And I think if he had them going in, like a coach like that going into his rookie year, he'd be a little better. Yeah, but still, their personnel just isn't good enough. I think he'll be good. I don't think he'll be talked about too much, to be honest with you. I think you'll hear from him. You'll see highlights. Oh, Cam Ward, he's the number 1 overall pick. Of course, you're going to see highlights and hear from him a little bit, especially on the NFL page. They're just not going to be a good team. It's kind of like Caleb Williams kind of fell out of the spotlight and it turned into all Jay Daniels, Bo Nix, guys like that instantly because their teams were good. People were bashing Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams wasn't necessarily in the spotlight at all. Same thing with Drake May. Drake May made some great plays on New England last year. His team was awful around him. And that's going to be the same situation with Cam Ward. Cam Ward's team is terrible. You're going to see his highlight plays, but you're not going to see him a lot. The team, I think I have the Titans finishing at 5 wins maybe. He's throwing to Calvin Ridley and Tyler Lockett. Yeah, he does have some guys he's throwing to at least, but they just released Treylon Burks the other day. It wasn't good anyway, but curious to see what team's going to pick him up. Yeah, I think they hurt his collarbone a couple of days ago. Yeah, in training camp. Ugh. Yeah, I feel bad for that guy. But yeah, Cam Ward, I think he's going to have a good rookie year. You know, he's not going to blow it out of the water. It's not going to be Jane Daniels. You know, I don't think we're going to have a quarterback that's going to have that Jane Daniels, C.J. Stroud kind of season. If he does, all power to him. Great for him because he's proven everybody wrong. You know, I don't think anyone's necessarily saying he doesn't have that. I don't think he's as talented as Jane Daniels or even as C.J. Stroud, but I think he's a talented guy, though. I think that, you know, they have a good quarterback. But, you know, those are two different levels of guys to me. Next question. We have Matthew. Where do you think Derrick Henry ranks all time at the running back position? People talk about him as being great, but I've never heard him in an all-time ranking. What are your thoughts? Okay. I think Derrick Henry is a top 10 running back. You look at his prime, what he just did to just grown men. Earl Thomas on the Ravens in the playoff game. You know, Earl Thomas was still playing at an extremely high level in the Ravens that year. He had one of the greatest defenses ever that year. He picked them apart. You know, and that's just an example. That is one lone example. He put the Tennessee Titans on his back. Speaking of Cam Ward, the Titans, look at them without Derrick Henry right now. They were the number one seed a few years ago when he was in his prime with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. You know, I mean, I know they had A.J. Brown and stuff. Dude, Derrick Henry was the heart and soul of that team. You know what people thought when they thought of the Tennessee Titans? They thought of Derrick Henry. That's who they thought about. And he's just a literal bulldozer. You know, he's not better than Walter Payton or Barry Sanders. And he still has some years left to catch up to some of those all-time records. Like he's reaching into the top 10 list on a lot of stuff now. So that's definitely going to help his all-time rankings. You know, you got to remember a lot of those guys who are up there on the list, you know, maybe excluding Barry Sanders, you know, he kind of retired a little early in his career and still is on a lot of all-time records. You know, he just has to play a few more years. And especially he doesn't have a Super Bowl. If Derrick Henry won a Super Bowl, especially with Tennessee, and this is his chance this year with Baltimore, you know, again, Baltimore's my Super Bowl favorites this year. Again, it pains me to say it. I'm here in Baltimore, being a Patriots fan, but I live near Baltimore, that's what I say. And being a Patriots fan, it pains me to say that, but this is the year for Derrick Henry, and especially Lamar Jackson and just a lot of guys on those teams, to take a boost in their all-time rankings. Do you know the boost Lamar Jackson would get over Josh Allen if he won the Super Bowl? You know, right now they have a neck and neck. A lot of people have Allen ranked over Lamar. Lamar would all of a sudden be 10 spots higher on that list if he won a Super Bowl. You'd hear him on top 10 all-time list. Seriously, you wouldn't. Like, I think people wouldn't have a hard time talking about him being over like Moreno and guys like that. Not saying I necessarily agree, but you start hearing those talks. And that goes for Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, I think, is breaching a lot of people's top 10 lists. And I see people having a 9, 8, I get it. I think by the time, give him a few more years, he'll be, you know, he'll be top 5. I think Derrick Henry's prime, you can argue he had like a top 5 prime of all time. He's up there with the Barry Sanders kind of prime. Emmitt Smith was more of like a longevity guy. You know, he played a lot of years and he was just a really good running back. Would I take him over Walter Payton and Barry Sanders? I would take Emmitt Smith over those guys. But I think Derrick Henry is going to be competing for a top 3 to 5 spot all time. He just has not played long enough yet. He's a top 10 running back to me. I don't think of where I rank him. I kind of got to think about my top 10 running backs a little more. I think I'll talk about that in another video coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. But maybe next week I'll do like a top 10 Tuesday and do it be like top 10 all-time rankings just to keep the top 10 Tuesday alive. Going in or just keeping topics about it right now. On it right now. I think I'll do like top 10 all-time running backs, and then I'll have Derrick Henry in a solidified spot. But I do have him in the top 10. he's just kind of like, again, breaching into it. Like he's just getting in there just because his numbers and stuff are just getting into that level of guys. So yeah, I'd have him like 10-9, maybe 8 right now. Next question. I got a question. I know you made a typo. That's okay. I got a question. I know you're excited to answer. MJ or LeBron? My friends who love torturing me with this question. I really do. Because this debate is so, I don't want to say dumb, but it's impossible to be correct about this debate. This is one of those debates it's impossible to be correct. Because you can make arguments for both guys. Until you're blue in the face. You can make arguments for both guys. One that negates the other. You know, you give one, you sit there and say, well, LeBron's the all-time scorer. Well, he's played more years than Jordan. And I guess you could sit there and kind of make that debate for any player, but people sit there and say, well, Jordan's just the better scorer. Well, LeBron's the all-time greatest scorer. No, he's played more years. But, and then Jordan fans will say, you just had to watch him. He's better scoring all the floor than LeBron James was. And I get it. From the mid-range, being just a pure mid-range shooter and just getting in a spot and shooting the ball, nobody was better than Michael Jordan at that. Maybe you could say Kareem with his skyhook, which doesn't get talked about enough in all-time conversations. Dirk Nowitzki with his post fade. Like, there's just some iconic shots. Michael Jordan with the mid-range. LeBron doesn't necessarily have like, a specific. LeBron just goes out there and decides, you know what, I'm either just going to shoot a three. Like the one on Zion Williamson when he was making his debut against him, and LeBron shot it from like half court and made it. Or LeBron just goes in there and throws his elbow on three guys and makes it over all three of them. LeBron just kind of does a little bit of everything. So did Jordan, though. Jordan wasn't necessarily as good as a three-point shooter as LeBron. And just because I think it was the era they played in, not necessarily saying like LeBron's like a good three-point shooter. He's been very inconsistent throughout his career. But, it's just, I don't know. It's like apples and oranges, man. Myself, and maybe it's just because I've watched him all my life. Like he literally got drafted the year I was born in 2003. LeBron James is just better all time to me than Michael Jordan. But anyone who comes up to me and says, well, Jordan's the GOAT, I'm not going to sit there and say you're wrong, because you can make an argument for it. Those two are unexplicable. You know what I'm trying to say? The GOAT. They just are. I just think LeBron, due to his all-time longevity, like what's he? He's doing in year like 22 or 23 this year, and he's still like the heart and soul of his team. Yeah, like Luka's better right now. Luka's could be a top 10 player of all time when it's all said and done. Like could be. I think Luka's going to finish top 15, 12 at least, depending on how many championships he wins. But man, what LeBron's still doing, like, you seen Jordan on the Wizards, like, the team was a disaster, and he was in, what year was he in at that point? That was, 2000? Yeah, it's somewhere in the early 2000s, but it's just, like, dude, it's so hard to go over it. It is. Again, MJ rings. Yeah, MJ has the rings debate. LeBron made the finals every single year in the 2010s. Every year in the 2010s, LeBron James was in the NBA finals. Well, besides 2019, I guess, the Raptors and Golden State. But LeBron was hurt. I think they may have ended up making the finals, seriously. But LeBron was hurt all year, really, for the majority of it. And I'll tell you this, Jordan is not 6-0. Going against the Golden State Warriors all throughout the 2010s. Could you imagine if Michael Jordan had that 1-3 comeback against that Golden State Warriors team? The 72-9 Warriors team, or 72-10 Warriors team. What's it, 73-9? I don't know. It was one of them. Either way, Either way, if not the greatest team to ever exist, they would be regarded as the best team to ever play if they won that NBA Finals. But you know who stopped that? LeBron James did. Not saying that Jordan couldn't have done it, but man, LeBron is just a one-man wrecking crew. Kyrie Irving, though, respectfully, was the man in that run too. Respectfully, I give him his flowers. It was, but the dominance LeBron's had over just the last 20 plus years has just been ridiculous. My entire life, LeBron James has been an all-star. He's been an all NBA guy. My entire life. I turned 22 years old in December. That's insane. That is literally insane. Crazy. And the last question I have today, the last question I have today. Do you believe the NFL should do a draft lottery of some sort? Like the NBA, prove everything was good. No. I don't even know why to think about that for a second. Absolutely not. The NFL should stay where it's at with the draft. The NFL is king with a lot of things right now. Viewership, all of that. The NFL's king. That's basic. It is what it is. The NFL is king. And you look at the numbers, it's all there. Viewership, they'd be on Netflix now. They're getting every single sponsorship on the planet. And people complain about them going on streaming services. I get it. Look at the views still when they're on Netflix, or even more. It is crazy. You know what? And the NBA has NBA TV. It's dying. It's completely dying. All of it right now. Their draft sucks. The lottery is, to me, one of the worst ideas in sports. You see the MLB too. Sort of like the NBA, but the MLB is the same way. The lottery sucks. The Cleveland Guardians just picked number one a few years ago in the MLB. They were in the playoffs. They had a positive record and picked number one. And you know who did pick number one? The Oakland Athletics and the Colorado Rockies and the Chicago White Sox. Three of arguably some of the worst teams this decade had not picked number one, or didn't pick number one, because the Cleveland Guardians did. And you know why they stayed so bad? Some of those teams had the Charlotte Hornets. Because of the draft lottery. It is unbearable. Those teams stay so bad for so long. And you always wonder if, and I've always said this about leagues like the MLB and the NBA, if they want it like that. Because teams like Utah, could you imagine if they had a Utah and, let me think of a team that's been really bad, like the Pistons. The Pistons do have a fan base, or the Utah and the Charlotte Hornets NBA Finals. Could you imagine what the Adam Silver's thinking about that in his head? That is the worst scenario for him humanly possible. Oh, for me, I'd watch it. That'd be interesting to watch. Utah and Charlotte in the finals. Like, dude, no one has ever seen that. No one may ever see that, to be completely honest with you. Two of some of the worst teams in the league right now. Utah is just completely rebuilding, and Charlotte actually has guys. Charlotte might actually be in the playoffs this year, seriously, if LaMelo Ball can stay healthy. Same with Brandon Miller, because they actually have a pretty good team right now. But otherwise, just the whole decade for those teams, they've been awful. Maybe not Utah. Utah's just now rebuilding. They've been in the playoffs, a good bit the last 10 years or so. But I've always wondered if the league wants those teams to stay bad. If we had an Oakland Athletics and the Chicago White Sox, World Series, could you imagine what the uppers at the MLB are thinking with that? Absolute utter disaster for their viewership. But they don't even ever give it a chance. But you know what? As long as they have the Dodgers and the Yankees And those, as long as they're always near the top and spending gazillion dollars at a time, they don't care. They do not care. As long as the Lakers are in the spotlight, and as long as teams like, I don't want to say the Knicks. The Knicks have been just bad, but just any team with a star players in the spotlight. Again, the Lakers, as long as they are, they're fine. They don't care about teams like Utah or Charlotte or even DC or Boston. Always like Boston and LA are good. They don't care. They don't care. You know how bad the NBA wants a Celtics and Lakers finals again? Do you know how much Adam Silver goes to sleep at night wishing that happens? How much he wishes he doesn't air. There will never be another Oklahoma City and Indiana Pacers finals ever again. He's going to do everything in his power to not make that happen. Maybe not say Oklahoma City, because they're probably going to go again next year, to be completely honest with you. Their team's just stacked, like literally stacked. They re-signed all their core guys. But, yeah, that's absolute disaster move for those teams. And I think that's why some teams stick in the lottery. The thing is with the NFL, every team stays competitive because the draft is based on your record. I've seen rumors every now and then about, well, should the NFL do a lottery or change the draft? No, absolutely not. They're so worried about tanking. Whether or not those teams tank, they suck regardless. And you know what? They're not tanking anyway. They're not doing it. Those players are playing for their jobs and their livelihoods. Those guys are playing to make millions of dollars. Do you think they're going to tank for someone else's benefit? Absolutely not. One's it's a good example. My New England Patriots this year. They had Joe Milton, all those guys out there. They could have tanked that away. And no, they didn't. They could have had the number 1 overall pick and had the form of first overall picks for it. Whether it was from the Giants, the Titans, the Browns, whoever. They would have gave up two first-round picks for that and still been picking like 4 or 5 this year and got Will Campbell. But you know what? They went out there and they won that game. They didn't tank. They went out there and they gave the big middle finger to the fans almost. And they didn't care. They didn't care. Players are not going to tank. They're just not. They're not going to do it. It's because they're playing for their livelihoods out there. So now the NFL should never go to the lottery. Depending on what they were to change up, I'm never really against change, but it just depends. Like if it's something that's very unnecessary and doesn't help anything, then don't do it. Just leave it how it is. I don't really think anyone's complaining about the NFL draft, especially the fans whose teams suck. Well, could you imagine if the NFL had a lottery this year and the Titans were picking 7, and let me think of a team that was like not half bad, and Seattle was picking number 1. Like Seattle was picking 1 and Tennessee was picking 7. Oh my gosh, it would just suck to watch. Or the 49ers were picking 1. It'd just be like, what am I watching here? Seriously. So, yeah, NFL, stay with your draft. Stay away from the lottery. And if you are the NBA, the NBA and the MLB, get away from it. Your viewership would go up exponentially if you were to do that, I promise. Oh, man. It makes me aggravated talking about the lottery. Not saying like you should ask that question, because I enjoy talking about it, but like I just do not like the lottery at all. That's what I mean. So that's it for the questions today. Again, I have a lot more questions in the DMs and stuff like that. I'm probably going to answer some more going throughout the week. Honestly, I'll probably answer a couple more tomorrow. I gotta do the editing and stuff today. I have some stuff to do today. So yeah, and it's 11 a.m. as we're at this time. So again, thank you guys so much for all the questions you asked. Keep firing it. I'm gonna do a really long episode of Why Not Wednesday soon, probably like even an hour long. I could literally do like an hour long video today. Seriously, I just have a ton of questions, probably longer than that. You guys are amazing. Seriously, you guys are killing it with these questions, and these questions are very good questions. It's never a bad question on this channel. I'll answer any of them again. Life talks, anything at all. I do it here. You need advice, help, anything. My DMs are always open on this channel. So again, make sure to fire in those DMs to get your questions answered here exclusively on the Talk of the Town podcast. I hope everyone has a great day today, and however many days, just have a great day, and I will see you guys on the next one.